Most of you are consuming a lot of English. You watch Netflix, you follow podcasts, you read articles, and you understand most of it. You really do. But the moment you need to speak, in a meeting, on a call, in front of someone who matters, something happens. You freeze. The words are somewhere in there, but they don't come out the way they should. And more than that, you feel fake. Like you're playing a character. Like at any moment, someone is going to figure out that the English you're producing isn't really you. Now, the problem here isn't your vocabulary, it isn't your grammar. In my 20-year career as an English teacher, I have met hundreds of B1 and B2 learners with perfectly solid grammar who still feel exactly like this every single time they open their mouth. The problem here goes much deeper, and today I'm going to show you exactly what it is and what to do about it. Hey everybody, how's it going? Thiago here, and today I want to talk about something nobody in the English learning space is really talking about. Why you feel fake when you speak, and why it has nothing to do with your level. All right, so let me start with something I have observed over 20 years of teaching, and honestly, that I've never heard anyone else articulate quite this way. Listen closely. There are two types of English learners at the B1 and B2 level. Two types. And the difference between them is not grammar and it's not vocabulary. It's not even how much they study. It's their relationship to English itself. The first type of learner is someone I call the defender. The defender wants to speak English well, really, but there's something happening underneath, inside, a kind of silent resistance. Every time they go to express themselves in English, a part of them inside is monitoring, holding back, making sure they don't go too far, they don't change too much of themselves. They don't want to become something their family would not recognize. And I want to be clear, this doesn't come from weakness. It comes from loyalty, from love for where they came from, their origins. Their native language isn't just a communication tool, it is their identity. And speaking English freely, really freely, can feel at some unconscious level like a small betrayal of who you are. So what happens? Their English stays functional. It does the job, but it never becomes theirs. And they keep feeling fake because they are, in a very real sense, performing a language they have never allowed themselves to fully inhabit. Let me give you an example here. I've had students who, in our sessions together, were articulate, confident, funny even, real personality coming through. But the moment a native speaker joined the call, someone they didn't know, they completely shut down. They reverted to safe, textbook English, short sentences, safe vocabulary. The voice that sounds correct, but says nothing about who they actually are. That's the defender in action. And if you've ever felt that way, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the second type of learner is what I call the expander. Now, the expander looks at English completely differently. For them, English isn't a foreign language to conquer. It's a new space, a room in their personality that didn't exist before, with no furniture, no history, no version of them that was built by someone else. For the expander, English is not a threat to who they are. It is an extension of who they are. And here's something fascinating. Expanders often become much more confident in English than in their native language. They become more direct, more articulate, not because English is a better language, but because it arrived without the weight, without the scripts, without the version of themselves that other people constructed before they even had any say in the matter. English for the expander is permission. That's right, permission. Now, I want you to think honestly, which one of these is you? Not which one you want to be, which one actually describes what happens inside you when you open your mouth in English. Think about it. Now, before we continue, let me be honest with you about something. The reason most learners stay stuck as defenders isn't that they lack knowledge. It's that they never practice in conditions that force them to generate English, not simply translate it. And that is exactly what the B2 Edge app was built to solve. Every single day, the app puts you in a simulated role play, a real scenario, a real conversation where you don't have time to translate in your head. The situation is moving, the pressure is real, and your brain has no choice but to start producing English from the inside out. Not retrieving it, producing it. This is how you stop being a defender. This is how you find your voice in English. If you want to try the app, the link is in the description. But look, if you want to keep going the do-it-yourself route, no problem. Let's continue with the content. All right, let me tell you something personal here. Just to give you an idea of, where I'm coming from with this. When I started really pushing my English, that was 25 years ago, I was in Brazil, no real access to native speakers, no internet the way we have it now, and I noticed something strange. I noticed that I felt more confident in English than in Portuguese, my own language. Can you believe that? I felt more direct, more assertive. I felt like I could say exactly what I meant without all this noise around it. And for a long time, I thought something was wrong with me. Surely your native language should be where you feel most yourself, right? But then I understood. And this is the insight I want you to take away from everything in this video that we are talking about. Your native language is non-neutral. It never was. From the moment you were born, your first language was being loaded with roles, expectations, with a version of you that was assembled by your parents, your school, your culture, before you were even old enough to have any opinion about it. So nowadays, when you speak your native language, you're not just communicating, you are activating that entire system. Now, English, for me, had no system, no history. Nobody knew me before. It was just the present moment and whoever I decided to be in it. But here's the story that really proved this to me. And I've never actually shared this much publicly before. Check it out. When I first met my wife, who's also an English teacher, we only spoke English during our first 3 dates. That's just how it happened, We met in an English-speaking context, and we kept going, meeting and talking in English. And in those first 3 dates, she told me later, she thought I was this confident, articulate, interesting guy. Someone who had clear opinions. Someone who made her laugh. Someone who knew who he was. But then, about a month after we started dating, I called her on the phone, and for the first time ever, I spoke to her in Portuguese on the phone. She did not recognize me. I'm not joking. She genuinely did not connect the person on that phone call with the person she had been dating for a month. She told me later that she didn't particularly like my Portuguese version. And I'm pretty sure what she noticed, even if she couldn't articulate it at the time, was this. The confident, direct, interesting guy she had met in English, he wasn't showing up in Portuguese. A different version of me was, a more guarded one, a more scripted one. So, if this can teach us anything, and I think it can teach us a lot, it's this. The language you speak doesn't change how others hear you. It changes which version of you actually shows up. And most of you watching this are showing up to English as your Portuguese self, or as your Spanish self, or your Mandarin self. Translate it. And translations always lose something. So let me ask you something. When you feel fake in English, what exactly feels fake? Is it really your grammar, your accent? Or is it that the English coming out of your mouth doesn't really match the internal experience of who you are when you are at your best? Because if it is the second one, and in my professional opinion, for most of you it is, then more grammar drills are not your answer. The answer is understanding what English can actually give you if you let it. All right, let me give you an example here that I think will make this much more concrete for you to understand. Imagine two B2 learners. Same level, same grammar, same vocabulary range. Same number of hours studied even. Everything the same on paper. Learner A grew up in a culture where directness is considered rude, where disagreeing with someone more senior is almost unthinkable, where you soften your speech, you hedge, you defer. And when this learner speaks English, all of that comes with them. They hedge in English exactly the way they hedge in their first language. Their English is technically correct, but it sounds like a translation of someone who doesn't want to take up space or disagree with people or bother people. Now, learner B grew up in the exact same culture, same upbringing, same language background. But learner B decided, maybe consciously, maybe not, that English was a different room. That in this room, the old furniture didn't have to come in. That in this room, they could be direct, precise, assertive, in ways that had never felt available to them in their first language. Learner B does not feel fake because they're not performing English. They are living in it. That's right. But they are living in it in a different room inside themselves. Now, some of you might be thinking, Thiago, isn't that a betrayal of my culture, of who I am? Let me address this directly. No, it is not a betrayal of who you are. It is an expansion of who you are. Your native identity is not fragile. It does not need to be defended from a language. English cannot erase who you are or where you come from. What it can do, if you allow it, is give you more dimensions, more access points to the same person. Your accent is not your problem. Your relationship to the language is your problem. The real question is not, will English take something from me? But the real question is, what part of you has been waiting for a language like English to finally show up, to finally be activated? All right, so how do you actually make this shift? How do you move from a defender to an expander? Let me give you 3 steps. 3 things you can start working on today. These are mindset and behavioral shifts. And like all real shifts, they require deliberate, consistent practice. Step 1, stop translating. Start producing. The number one source of the feeling of fakeness is the translation loop. You know what I'm talking about. You think the thought in your native language, you translate it into English, you kind of check if it sounds right, and then finally you say it. This produces maybe, hopefully, technically correct English. But it produces English that feels hollow, superficial, because it was built for another language and retrofitted into this one. You cannot recognize what you cannot produce, and you cannot produce what you haven't yet internalized. Let me give you an example here. Let's say someone asks you unexpectedly to summarize your position on something in a meeting. In your native language, the words will come. No problem. But in English, you freeze. Not because you don't know the words, but because your brain is trying to translate a thought that was formed in another language. It's trying to check the grammar and deliver it naturally, all at the same time. That is just too much processing. And the result is that you sound hesitant, guarded, and fake. The solution here is to practice speaking under pressure. Situations where you don't have time to translate, or the conversation is moving, the stakes feel real, and your brain has to generate English directly, not retrieve a translation. This is the exact reason my app, the B2 Edge, exists, and it was built around daily role plays. Every day, the app puts you in a simulated scenario. It could be a job interview, a difficult conversation with a client, a spontaneous debate, and you have to respond in real time. No script, no translation window, just you and the situation. The cool thing is that over time, your brain stops translating and it starts generating. And that is when English starts to sound and feel like yours. Step 2, find your English voice, not a borrowed one. A lot of learners at your level pick someone to imitate or shadow, an accent they admire, a speaker they want to sound like. Imitation is a valid tool. In the early stages, it is actually essential. But at B1 and B2 levels, imitation becomes a ceiling because you cannot sustain someone else's voice forever. And when you try, it sounds and feels fake because it is. You're not being who you are. Let me give an example here. I've had students who spend months trying to sound like an American news anchor. Very precise pronunciation, very controlled delivery. And yes, their pronunciation improved, which is great. But they still sounded a bit robotic because they were so focused on performing a sound that they forgot to actually say anything. The voice was borrowed. The person behind it had gone quiet. Your English voice is not the voice of someone you admire. It's the voice that shows up when you stop performing and start communicating with a genuine intention of being understood as yourself with your background. That voice will have traces of your background. Yes, your rhythm, maybe your accent. And in my professional opinion, that is not a flaw. That is your signature. The role plays in the B2 Edge app are specifically designed for this. Because when you are put in a real scenario, under real pressure, the borrowed voice falls away because it's too slow, too effortful. And what's left? It's the voice that actually comes out, your voice. So the app helps you find it and then reinforces it every single day. Step 3, use English to ask different questions about yourself. This is the most advanced of the three and the most powerful. I want you to think of English not just as a communication tool, but as a thinking tool. Different languages make different questions easy to ask. English, which is built around directness and precision, is particularly good at helping you interrogate beliefs, especially the ones that limit you, without all the emotional weight those same beliefs carry in your native language. Let me give you an example here. Think of a belief you'll hold about yourself. It could be something limiting, something like, I'm not good enough to speak in front of clients, all right? Or something like, I always freeze under pressure. Now try to say that belief out loud in English. Not translated. Say it in English, directly from scratch. Something interesting tends to happen. First, the belief shrinks. Or at least it starts to feel like something you are observing, not something you are. English creates a little distance, and that distance is incredibly useful. That is English working for you at the deepest level, not as a foreign language you've conquered, but as a new dimension of yourself you've learned to inhabit. All right? All right, let's just recap here very quickly everything we discussed today. Listen closely. Today I gave you the two types of learners: the defender, who protects the fixed version of themselves in English, and the expander, who uses English to access a version of themselves they couldn't access or reach before. And I gave you 3 steps to make the shift. Step 1, remember, stop translating and start producing. Get into situations where your brain generates English, not retrieves it. Step 2, find your English voice, not a borrowed one. Stop chasing someone else's sound and start owning your sound, your voice. And step 3, use English as a thinking tool. Let it help you question the version of yourself your native language built for you. And underlying all of this is this: English is not just a skill, it's a space. And the version of you that belongs in that space, maybe the more direct, more confident, more articulate version, is already there. You just have to give it permission to show up. Now you know why you feel fake when you speak English. And you have 2 choices to make. Number 1, you can go away and try to engineer these conditions yourself. Find the right scenarios, set up the right practice, hold yourself accountable every day. It is possible. It will just take a lot of time and a lot of friction. Or, number 2, you open the B2 Edge app, you log in, and every day my AI coach puts you in a simulated role play, a real scenario, real pressure, no script, no time to translate, just you producing English from the inside out, the way fluent speakers do. And over time, something shifts. the translation loop slows down. Your own voice starts coming through. And one day you will notice English doesn't feel borrowed anymore. It feels like yours. And that's what the B2 Edge app is built to do. So click the link in the description, and I hope to see you on the inside. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm Thiago. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll talk to you in the next video.